Hey, thanks for joining, you video watchers. I forgot to start recording. We've already been through part of this, but essentially what we've done is we've downloaded the files from today's day in the blog. So we've downloaded truck list and parser, and we followed the notes to install Selenium. So if we just open up that blog, it will take us step by step, how to install the Selenium Basic, which is what we need to be able to control Chrome from VBA. So you'll go through this. The only hiccup is when you get down to the bottom where you're running this test script, it may come up and say, hey, you need some extra features to be able to do this. And we'll give you a link. Go ahead and install that VB.NET library, or the .NET library it's called, and go through that installation process and you should be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. We'll make sure that we get everyone set up here and we'll move forward. Stop the recording. Oh no, I just stopped the share. It's still recording. I'm going to share the screen. Then I'm going to pause the recording. More. Okay, so I'm going to open up trucklist.xlsx. I can find my downloads. And since we're going to be, this is XLSX, let us know there's no VBA in this now. I am going to want to save some VBA in this. So I'm going to go ahead and save this straight away as a .xlsm file. Now I'll probably call it winter of 22 XLSM. Okay, so I've got that open and it's telling us to insert a module, grand, so Alt F11, insert module. Now we should be able to make a reference. Oh, we're gonna, next let's put in this code. It's kind of our example code to get started. So we've got a sub procedure here. And then add a reference to the Selenium type library. So tools, references, Selenium type library. And I'm kind of expecting to see it. Oh, there it is. Whew. Should zoom in because I can't even see it. Tools, references, and Selenium type library, make sure you put a check mark next to it, not just select the line. So what this does is this tells the VBA interpreter saying, hey, when you're going to compile this code, we're going to be having references to a library that you don't normally include. So there's a bunch of code that's written here that allows us to be able to do this, and it's external to VBA. So we've got to get the Selenium type library. And once again, that is tools, references, and then find Selenium type library. It'll be there alphabetically. But once you've checked it, it comes up to the top so you can see which ones you've got. Say okay. Okay, so far so good? Yeah. If it's grayed out, it means either you don't have your module in place yet, if you already put the module and copied the code, or you're currently running the code. So make sure you hit the stop button. And then, yeah, because if you try to run this before, it'll give you an error and put you in break mode and say, hey, I don't know what you're talking about when you say WebDriver. What's this WebDriver stuff? That's why we have to add the reference. Other questions? Yeah.
So I know it's super important to declare all our variables and the variable type at the beginning. The variable type will guess, but when we're using like special references package, like we absolutely need to define a variable like this. Because, I don't know,
So yeah, what your question is, could we use variant here instead? Right? Yeah, let me talk you through that, because I think I understand the question. So you say, what you're saying is that, look, it crashed here. I mean, it couldn't work here without the reference because we didn't say WebDriver. So could we say variant here? The answer is yes, but it doesn't bias very much. Here's the first reason that you want to say WebDriver is because if it knows the type here, right now when I say bot dot, it says, oh, I know what you can do here. Here's your options. And so if we left this as variant, it wouldn't fail here, but when we say we want bot to be a new WebDriver, it still wouldn't know what this WebDriver is. So changing these declarations to variant won't help us bypass the need for that. Now, instead of saying new variant or new WebDriver, there's another way to say create object and tell it what object to create. And if you put the right string in there, it can find it even without the reference. But you have to know how to declare that with the create object. And that, presumably we can figure that out, a little Googling. So you probably could do it without the reference, but you definitely, when we're first starting, we definitely want to use the reference. Yeah, and it doesn't, variant doesn't give us any help about what library it might be using. It's just how much memory gets allocated and what are we allowed to do with it. Okay, so the whole purpose that we've done so far is to get this thing called a WebDriver. And that WebDriver is what's going to allow us to interact with a browser, to drive that web browser. And so you've probably heard of the term bot. How many of you could explain what a bot is to your little brother or sister? Just a couple of us. Okay. So the idea behind a bot in web lingo is short for robot. And what a robot is just like it's software that's automated to interact with web servers like humans do, but it's a program instead. These are sometimes also called agents or user agents. So kind of bot, agent, they mean the same thing. It's a piece of software that takes the place of a human in interacting with what normally would be a human interacting with the site. So instead of a browser getting a page and letting a human decide what to do on it, the bot talks to a web server and gets the page, and the bot looks at it and decides what to do. So this kind of brings up kind of some legal issues about what we're about to do. As it turns out, I'm about to teach you stuff that will let you break the law pretty easily. Most of the stuff we do in VBA, I'm not worried about you breaking the law with what I've just taught you. But this one you can. As it turns out, if you own a web server, you have the right to say humans only, no bots allowed. And there's a couple of places where you might express that. Let me just show those really briefly. Let me just kind of show you those since I'm doing something that could bring down the wrath of a website, upon your head. So the first place, let me go to walmart.com. Presumably you're familiar with a thing called the terms of service. Sign in. I don't want to sign in as anybody. I want to go to Walmart. Walmart.com. I don't want to sign in. I want to go to walmart.com. That looks better. Okay, so if I look, so usually at the bottom of the page, I can find something called terms of service or terms of use. Here's this. This is a legal document that some lawyers had a great time writing that says, these are the rules that you agree to if you come and use our site. And quite often, let's look for bot on this. Both, robot. Use, okay, so what is this? In connection with Walmart sites, you will not. What will you not do? You will not use any robot, spider, site search, retrieval application, or other manual or automatic device to retrieve, index, scrape, data mine, or otherwise gather any materials or reproduce. Okay. So they are explicitly saying here, no bots allowed on our site. It's a legal question as to whether this document is really binding on you. In most states, the terms of use is not a binding document. In Virginia and Washington State, the terms of use is binding. Like if you use the site and the terms of use is there, you have entered into a contract and you agree to abide by these rules. But in most states, that's not the case. Any of you have any experience in business law to know why it's not the case, that it's not, they can't just form a contract by saying, here's a contract you agreed to? There's at least two legal doctrines. Yeah, it's called, informed consent isn't quite the word. For a contract, it's mutual assent. Both parties of the contract have to agree, and it's manifest assent, I think is, if I remember, it's been a long time for me since I took the business law class. But yeah, if you don't actually, like in an affirmative way, agree to it, you can't be held to it. Law is different in some states, but for most states, that's the case. And the other one is that there's no consideration, right? So unless you give some consideration, you can't be in a contract. Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, quite possibly. It's always right here. I'm at the web server, web.com/. It's a text file, and it's meant. It's actually using the SRC. There's like a standard for this, and so it's the one that you really need to pay attention to, right? This is the one where we say this. I'm being recorded saying this, so I want to be a little bit careful about how I say it. Here's the one that the lawyers made, who are like, okay, we're going to protect ourselves in court. But Walmart, no, does Walmart really want no robots allowed? What would it mean if there's no robots allowed, really? Where would they not show up that they want to show up? Search engines, right? That's how Google is able to search the internet so fast. They have a program, it's called Googlebot, that what does it do? It goes to a web page. It does two things. It says, record all the words on this web page, and then follow every link on this web page. That's it. That's all it does. When it follows the link, what does it do? It records the word on that web page, and it follows the links on that web page. Just spends its whole life. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of copies of Googlebot running all the time, just going from site to site, saying what's on this site. So Walmart doesn't really mean no robots allowed. What they mean is, I'm stumbling here because I want to be careful with the recording. In practical means, they say this: what we're really interested in is we want your robots to obey these rules. And so here's what it says. We're not going to get in deep into this, and this is actually kind of a complex one, but it says user agent star. That means every robot has to obey these rules. If it starts with robots, if it starts with walmart.com/API, don't go there with a robot. If it starts with walmart.com/account, don't go there with a robot. Oh, by the way, if it starts with review product, that's allowed. If it starts with review seller, that's allowed. But essentially, if it doesn't disallow it, then you're allowed to go there. Now, there's another one here, the agent Slurp. So they have something specifically about ads bought at Google, but they're not saying anything specific about it. So this is just like they put it here and then they're not restricting it. But Slurp is the name of another one. Apparently, it's the name of the bot that Yahoo uses. And they felt that Yahoo was hitting their server too fast. And so they said, okay, Slurp, when you come here, you've got a delay by 5 seconds between, you can make requests as many requests as you want, 5-second delay between requests. That's what they asked. So robots.txt is here for, this is really what Walmart really means for automated interaction with their site. Here's the places you're allowed to go, places you shouldn't go. And if you've been abusive enough that we've noticed you, we might put something specifically about your bot. unfortunately, the stuff we're doing isn't telling enough information to Yahoo to know how to restrict our bots. But here's the general rule. Don't go crazy, right? So you don't get 50 of your friends to all run your bot to hit that site as fast as they can. One bot kind of making one request after another usually is okay. Yeah. So that's definitely a part of it. So in case you didn't hear it, is that, what are these concerned about? I think definitely that's what's going on here. They're saying we want to be listed on Yahoo. We're going to allow Yahoo to come and do this, but don't hit us as hard as you've been hitting us because it's having a kind of an effect on our servers. So slow things down. Yeah, and it's almost a whole lecture just kind of talking about what the legal implications of doing this is. It turns out in the very beginning of my academic career, I was doing a lot of this. And I ran afoul of a lot of rules. And I had websites like shut off the whole access to my university because of what I was doing. They were like, we don't know what's going on, but no one from Tulane University is allowed to access our website anymore. And I didn't know what the rules were. So it took me a little bit to find out about that. Okay. But, so a couple of things. If it's not disallowed here, you're okay. But still, be reasonable with what you do. All right. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and see if this works. I'm going to use F8 to run this because I want to go one line at a time and just kind of watch it go. So I'm pressing F8 to run. That should open up Chrome, and it did on a different screen. Okay, so now this bot.get, so bot.start, and starting Chrome is going to tell it which one to start up. Now this one is bot.get is going to open a page. So F8, it's taking me to this advanced search page. Now, what this is saying here is I'm going to find an element by name. So there's some element on this page. There's some element on this page that has a name, AS_Q. How would I find out what AS_Q is? We're going to look at that in just a second. But what we're saying here is we're saying when you find that element, we're going to send the keys in here for Colonial Heritage Festival. Don't be surprised in this advertisement. I did something or in this example, I did something that advertises something I care about. So I'm going to run that. Somewhere on here, ASQ, I bet it's going to be this top one. I'm going to run that line and we'll see it, put the information there into Chrome. So it's put this now here into Chrome. And now there's a button called JFK button, John F. Kennedy. I wonder if they named that after the dead president. I don't think so. That would be weird. But I'm going to run that, F8, and that's going to find that object, and it's going to click it. And so we successfully put information onto that web page, and we clicked it. Now, what does Google see? Does Google, aside from the fact that this is Google Chrome, their software, does the Google search engine know that I just made this in an automated way? The answer is no. From Google's perspective, they see a request coming from Chrome. Someone typed in Colonial Heritage Festival, and they did a search, and that's it. So that's the thing. Now, as it turns out, there are some sites that are like, what, we don't want you interacting with us electronically. And that robots.txt, that's a voluntary thing. You can ignore that, and it's not like it's gonna stop you, right? That's them telling you how you should behave. If you hit Google fast, like every, just like as soon as that one's done, send another one, send another one, send another one, they might answer 10 requests before they say, we think you're a robot. And they'll put up like a CAPTCHA, prove to us that you're human. Now, I know, Sam, you were experienced. About how many requests did it take to actually have it hit? It's not even 10. Make 6 requests really fast. And they're like, yeah, no, you're no human can type. I don't care how much caffeine you've had today. You can't type that fast. And so they'll stop. And so kind of another way to kind of be safe about this is like, think, it's great that I can do this without having to be here and typing it and can set this thing up to run. But you might say, why don't we let this thing pause for a few seconds in between and not put undue load out there? Because kind of once you've done that to Google, they're going to watch even closer kind of going forward. So, okay. But so of us here, how are we doing? We got a couple questions on chat. I hope you're chatting to each other because I don't know the answer. The audio got messed up. The audio is not working. Is the audio working now? Folks out there in Zoom land? Yeah, the audio is back up. So hopefully there wasn't too much lost. And again, if you want to go pick up the video from last semester, there shouldn't be anything that's new and revelatory here. I don't think I talked about robots.txt last time I talked this. Yeah, Sam's going, it's the first time I've heard. Okay. Did it work for you? Did this work? Yeah, so far so good. Anyone that tried that it did not work for? Okay, well, I think we're ready to kind of work on the example then. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're after. So here we've got a set of kind of information that we got from some government website that says, here's a list of trucking companies. Here's where they're from, what type of carrier they are, what their fleet size is, and what the U.S. Department of Transportation number is. Now, what we'd like to be able to do is we'd like to be able to call these guys. I don't think we're really going to send them a fax, but we'd like to at least be able to call these folks. And if it turns out, I'm giving you the URL right here, that we should be able to go to this URL and we should be able to put in the US Department of Transportation number, and they should give us the information they're required to give to the government to work on this. But before I go there, before we do that, I wanted to show you how do we look for this part right here. So I'm just going to drag bot back up here to where it goes to that search page, and I'll go through this one more time. So taking it back to the search page, let's do this. I am going to just right click anywhere here on this page, and I'm going to choose inspect. Inspect is going to kind of show me the underlying HTML that gets rendered as this page right here. I'm going to choose the little more option here and undock this. So I'm going to set this in a separate window, just so I can kind of put it over here side by side. Okay, so while I'm here on elements, I can choose this button right up here. It looks like a little pointer pointing at a screen. And then I can come over here and I can, as I hover over, it will show me the different parts that I'm referring to over there on the left. So I should be able to come right in here. Let's just take a look at what we have here. So this is called JF. This is a class. The class kind of tells you about kind of how it's shown. We have lots of parts of this page that have the same class, and that's where we apply the different styles, put a background color and border and so forth. And so I could go after this by its class, but there may be many of this class. This has an ID. I can go after it by its ID. The ID is XX. Let me scroll over just a bit. That's an ID. The ID should be unique. No two elements of this page should have the same ID. And there's also a name. Name is often unique, but not always unique. So here's the name. And so this input box has a name, ASQ. And so here I'm saying get element by name. And if there's more than one element with that name, it's just going to find the first one. Get element by name, ASQ, and then send these keys to it. So this button down here, I should be able to do that same thing, inspect, point at that button, and it has a class. Now I'm guessing this one doesn't have a name or ID because I would prefer to use name or ID, but I'm using the class JFK button, and that must be the first one that has JFK button because get element by class, and then just click on it. Okay, so what that means is that if you know a little bit about HTML, this part's going to be a little bit easier for you. If you don't know anything about HTML, there's a little bit of a, it's kind of a lot more trial and error. It's going to be involved here. You kind of look at it and try to find out exactly what it's talking about, because what's the difference between an input and a div? And the div might have the ID and might take some work. Question? So yeah, can you find something by XPath? And the answer is yes, but we're not going to talk about that today. So yeah, in fact, we can look here. If I come down here, well, let's go ahead and build on the example. We've got like 25 minutes to work that example. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this or stop this code. And that once that code stops, my browser is gone. It'll launch a new browser the next time we get there. And let me go ahead then and I'll just copy the Google search and we'll use it as a beginning place. But I'm going to call this differently. I'm going to call this, why don't we just call this get one. So this would be kind of similar to what we've done in the past when we've got lots of things to work on. I'm going to have one called get one, where I'm going to pass it the row I'm interested in. And then, of course, we could make another loop that kind of goes through and passes information to get one as we go. This one this way, this way. Not need that much on a carrier type location. Okay. So let's call this get one. And let's pass a row into it as a long. And so actually, because if we do this inside this loop, then it's going to like open up a new web window for every one. So I think what I'd rather do is I'd rather set my web driver as up here at the top. So let's make bot as defined something globally. So I'm not going to declare it inside of Google search. I'm not going to declare it inside of get one. It's going to be a module level variable. And then let's do this. Let's say if bot, oops, yeah, dim bot is driver, I'm getting out of here. If bot is nothing, then set bot as a new driver. So if I make a variable, an object variable, and I've never actually bound it onto an object, it's going to be nothing. So when I say is nothing, that will be true if I haven't bound onto it yet. So we say, listen, if I haven't already bound bot on, then go ahead and bind it as a new driver. Otherwise, don't do anything because it's already bound onto that object. We'll go ahead and, in fact, let's do this. And if that's the case, Chrome will probably already be started. So then we'll start Chrome in that case. Otherwise, it will be started. So end if. Well, that's going to get our Chrome set up if needed. Otherwise, it's open and we'll be ready to go. So now what I want to do is I want to pass it to that URL that I have on this page. But I may just go ahead and open up another Chrome window so I don't have to kind of worry about it closing. I'm just going to go ahead and open this in a regular Chrome. And so here's a search. So kind of similar to what we did with that first Google example. And now I'm going to want to be able to find this. So let me go ahead and take us to that point. So instead of opening this search, we're going to open that one. I'm going to go ahead and just run it right there. I'll need something to test this. And we'll call get one. And we'll go ahead and pass it row number 2. Okay, so I've got my stop in here. I've got my Acme runner set up, so I should be able to run this. And if all goes well, it'll launch that Chrome window and take me to this page. And so here it has done that. Okay, so I'm interested in getting to this. So let me just go ahead and inspect it. Say inspect, and let's see what it tells us in here. Here's where I wish I had more screens than one. Okay, so now I can choose the little pointer here, point at this guy, and it should take me right to where that code is defined. Go full screen here. There we go. Okay, so input type, it's got a name, that's good. On focus, no ID, so I'm going to use the name, DOT. In fact, I may just come in here and see if name DOT shows up in more than one place. I'll just search, Control F, name equals DOT. And it seems like that should have found it. Did I have spaces? Well, I know the name, so let's go ahead and see if we can get to it that way. So find elements by name, DOT. Now, what I want to do is I want to send the keys that I want to send this. So that's going to be the row that I'm on that I passed in, column number E. So instead of sending keys as the string, let's just say cells, assuming that we've got the right page, row number row, column E. I'm going to go ahead and run that now. And it looks like it found that and put the value in OK. But I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to split this kind of in two different steps. I want to first get a reference to that object and then use the reference to that object to do the second half to actually send the keys. So to do that, I'm going to declare another kind of variable. So let me dim, I'll call it short for element. I'll call it elem, E-L-E-M, as, and then it's going to be a web element. You'll notice there's one web elements, which is just a collection of individual web element objects. This is going to be just a single one. So now, instead of identifying it and then sending the keys to it all in one stroke, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to say set elem equal to the first half of this. And then I will use that. See how I've taken that line and said, look, let me just get a reference to that object on the HTML document and then use that reference to send the keys. I'm going to go ahead and try that again. I'm going to come back here and just actually take it out by hand and check to see if this works. So F8, F8, that still works. Now the reason that this is helpful is that when I take this approach where I put it on two different lines, now I know, is the problem in identifying the object or is the problem that I'm having in actually telling it what to do? So doing it in those two steps is really helpful, especially when you're first starting out. That separates finding the object with manipulating the object. And so there's no reason that I couldn't, I'd say, hey, I'm done with that now. There's no reason I can't just reuse this same object for the next part. We've got to find that search button. Great, I'm going to inspect the search button. And it has a type submit and it has a name submit. That's great news. So we're going to say same thing, set elem equal to bot.find element by name submit. Now, one of the things that's going to be a little bit different in working with these web objects is that they're going to be case sensitive. So this name has a capital S on it. So I'm going to make sure that's the same way. In VBA, strings are case sensitive, but identifying, other identifiers typically aren't. But I'm going to match case. And then another line, elem.click. Bring Chrome back up. F8, whoops. F8 and click. Didn't much like being clicked on. It seems like it should have liked being clicked on. Should still be connected. I'm going to take it back up here, make sure that we're actually getting this part in as well. Okay, so it's not responding to the click the way that I think it should be responding. So let me check up. Sam, if you've got any ideas here, go ahead and chime in. Let me come up here and just kind of take a peek at Elm. Elm dot, let's say, attribute. And then attribute should have a tag name. Submit might not be unique. So that's a possibility, but so I'm getting to it here. Oh, yours is working? Is there anyone who's having the same problem me? It's not working. We've got some that are like that and some that aren't. Okay, so let me do this. I'm going to declare another, I'm going to take Sam's hypothesis. I'm going to dim one called Elems, E-L-E-M-S, as a web elements. And let me set Elems equal to find elements by name, submit. That should bring me back a whole set, not just the first one. What's that? Yeah, actually, I can't just click on Elems because there's going to be multiple of them. So I'm actually not going to run that one yet. So let's check and see what we're getting here. Let me come up here and see how many I've got. I've only got one. So that was a good thought, Sam, but I don't think that's the issue. So click sub. And I can never remember if this is going to be 0-based or 1-based. Let's see what that says. Doesn't like it. Elems click. Oh, not Elems. It should be Elems. Sorry, Elems 1.click. It looked like it clicked it, didn't it? I think it did something. How about 0? I think 0 is going to give me an error. Let's find out. Yeah, so it's a 1. It starts with 1. What happens if I click on it by hand? So yeah, that does go through if I click on it by hand. So the idea is we're trying to get to here. And then we want to find this and click on it, because after the search, we've got to choose the one we're actually after before it gives us the data that we want. I got to figure out why it's not doing that click. See if there's any more information here. Value type. Elems. Whoops, dot attributes. Yes, Elems sub 1. Okay, so I've lost my connection here. So I'm going to go ahead and just run this again. Yeah, so what you're saying is, maybe it's the text I'm after, I'm not actually attached to the button. But because I know if I ask for the tag name of this, it is the input that I have a reference to. Okay. So I'm a little bit stymied by this. Might take a little bit of work to track this down. But let's go ahead and kind of move on with the next part of this. We can, for those of you that, like me, that it's not working on at this point, let's just go ahead and advance ourselves this way. And then we'll move on from here. So I'll put a little note to myself. Not really clicking, need to track it down. But now, after we've got the click, then we're ready to move on. Now, here's a little problem, is that when we click on that, it is going to, as soon as we dispatch the click to that object, our VBA has done what it's supposed to do, and it's going to move on. but we desperately need this to wait until the page is loaded. So after we've hit that click, we're saying, listen, don't do anything now here until the page is loaded. And so let's take a look at what it takes for us to tell our VBA code to wait until the Chrome has started, until the Chrome page is loaded. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to put myself into a loop. So we're going to do a do loop. Let me get the structure in here. Do loop. Just put in my do events. And then I'm going to do this until, and then I want to search for something. So until, and what I'm going to do is I want to come and look. Okay, so there's several places that I could look. Like I want to just kind of stay inside this loop where I'm locked in this loop until I know the page is loaded. There's a couple of ways that I can tell. One, if I can say, listen, that's going to take me to a new URL. For instance, if I look here, search results is not in the URL before. If I can tell I want the new pages there by looking at the URL, then that'll be great. We'll use the URL. Alternatively, I can actually look onto the page. A little more complex to look onto the page, but I can actually look and see what's on the page. Maybe that I'm after, finding search results on this page as well. I'm going to go ahead and use the URL. So I'm going to do until in string, starting at the first character, looking at bot.url and looking for search results. Case is going to matter here. And then inside this loop, I'm just going to wait for a second. Application.wait, dot wait, and then when you wait, you give it a time to wait until, and so I'm going to wait till 1 second from now. Date add, and first is the interval, string s for second. Second one is how many, 1. And the third one is what time are we adding that to? Now. So now we'll read the time from the system clock, and this will return a date that is 1 second in the future. If I was to come up here and just print that, it's 1 second in the future. In case you're wondering, if I was to look 1 month into the future, and that would be 4/28. I'm looking 1 second into the future. And that's what that is. So this is going to wait until the system clock gets to that point. So what we're saying is check to see if search results is in the URL of the bot. If it is, that's the exit condition. Get us out of here. If not, wait for a second and then check again. Wait for a second, check again. So because I'm on that page, I should be able to just go past this. Uh-oh. Seems like it should have found that. I wonder if I'm not looking at the right page. That be it? No? You see what? Oh, because bot URL is a string. I don't want a string there. I actually want that to evaluate. That's okay. Shift F8. That will wait a second. We'll wait until the next second comes on. So if I'm partway through the second, it'll still just wait till the next second. And then that lets me out of the loop. So my problem was I had that in quotes. It should not be in quotes. Okay, so now I should be on this page. And so I want to find this first one and click on it. Let's see if we can actually click on this one. So kind of the same thing. Let me right click this and choose inspect. There's the link. And it's href. It's in a TD. That's a table data. That's the cell of a table that has a class of middle TD FM CSA. So if I find this by its class, then I should be able to, sometimes clicking on the TD itself will be fine. Otherwise, I got to click on the first thing that it contains. So let me go ahead and copy the class here to use to identify what I'm after. And let me go ahead and set elem equal to bot.find element by class. Find element by class. And then the class that I'm looking for is that middle TD FMSCA. Now, if there's no element of this class, that's going to be an error. And so let's do this. Before I look for that, let's tell it to ignore the error. On error, resume next. Right after we do this, let's check to see if there was an error. So I'm going to say if err.number is anything besides 0, then, and for right now, let's just stop. This is kind of handy while you're debugging, that if I end up inside this, if I hit that stop, we'll know, yeah, that was an error. You know, I did not find this. I did not find this. And I'll turn the error handler back on. On error, go to 0. I know it's been a while since we've done debugging code, error handling code, but this just says normal error handling. In other words, if there's an error, stop the code and show the box. And ultimately, what we might do is just get out of the sub, right? You tried to find with that U.S. Department of Transportation number, it wasn't there, so we're giving up on that one. But now, if I've got that, I'm ready to try to click on it. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to say, let's look inside that, just kind of inside that part of our page. So I'm going to say elem. What's elem? It's the table, it's the cell that has this class on it. It's the first cell with that class. Well, just like I can say bot to find an element by something, I can do that with an element as well. So I'll say element dot find element by tag. So I'm going to look for the first element inside the element that I've identified here that is an anchor tag. Let's just take a closer look. So the tag that I found is this one right here. Inside it, it has a tag that's an anchor, just A. And so we want to click on that. So let's make that click happen, and then we'll call it good. So elem.click. I'll be really happy if this click works. So let's come right back up here and we'll step through this. Didn't hit the error. We're going to bind onto that one. And let's see if it works. Still, the click's not working for me. Anyone that the click didn't work before, did it work this time? Anyone? Okay, we didn't get as far as I wanted to today. We still have to see how to pull the data off. For you, it didn't work the first time, did it work the second time? Worked both times. So I got to find out why this one's not working, and hopefully that'll give me some insight into why it's not working for you. And we'll pick up there next time we get together. All right, folks, thanks for coming. Class dismissed.